son's here getting ready to go from dinner. So yeah, we're here to talk about the CoCo Deluxe, or the Deluxe CoCo, is probably the way it more accurately is described. So first of all, I just want to apologize for all the noise you see up on there. When you guys get a chance to look at it, if you haven't looked at it on the floor already, there's a whole bunch of bodge wires, and this thing's pretty much like an antenna picking up every little bit of noise, and that's the best picture we've been able to get off of it. So this Deluxe here, if you've been by my table and had a chance to talk about it, Robert Killigus, he was a programmer with worked with Radio Shack back in the late 70s. Got started with the Model 1, and then he progressed into the color computer. And with that, when Radio Shack started developing the Deluxe CoCo, he was sent one of these units. We don't know the exact story of how he got it or why he still had it, because from what we understand, there was about 12 of these units that was made. And he worked very closely with Van Chandler at Radio Shack, and so we were suspecting that maybe Mr. Chandler had sent this to him to start doing some development, and because it went through Chandler and not through other channels like Mark Siegel as an example, it never got pulled back, or no letter was sent. So Robert's had it all these years, and with that, Curtis had been reaching out to Mr. Killigus to try to organize an interview. And through those conversations with Mr. Killigus, he mentioned that he had this equipment, and so Curtis started looking for options to get this equipment picked up, and eventually it led to me. And so I went out here last fall to Mr. Killigus' place in Flint, Michigan, where I picked up all these items that he had, most of which you see at my table. And after getting home and we started looking through all this stuff, we realized when we took the cover off, because at first glance we thought it was just a CoCo 1, a white CoCo 1, and then we quickly realized what this was. And one of the big advantages of this one is the ROMs that are on it, because we had heard about the Advanced Basic, and this one actually had a functioning set of Advanced Basic on it. Now, it's not a complete version or a final version, but it's a functioning version. And so we've been, over the last 6 months, looking at the ROMs, trying to learn how this thing is working, and just little by little, Curtis and Tim and Alan and Roger Taylor, they've been looking at the ROMs and trying to disassemble them and try to understand the commands. And Curtis will get into talking about those and the number of different commands that we've discovered. But that kind of brings us up to today, where we wanted to bring this in here and be able to show it a little bit more. So, does anybody have any questions with that so far? Or? We really don't. The only way we know is Mark Siegel's memory on what he remembers of what they should have been like. So, because he's been involved with some of the conversation on these, and as we talk about it, he's like, well, that changed, or that was never going to be in the final one. So, based on his memory, I don't know, maybe this was like 75% of what it might have actually been when it was all done, but we don't really know. So.
The core functionality of what's in here is basically what the final ROM would have had. But there's bugs. The tables aren't put together. Like the on-air go-to table has gaps where it just puts up random gibberish for errors and stuff like that, so it's definitely not finished. If you do something like a CLS9, it actually cold restarts the machine, which I'm pretty sure they don't want to do, because you could type in CLS9 by accident instead of 8 pretty easily and lose all your code because it reset the machine. Mark Siegel, he said that he had a final version of the ROM. There's one or two keywords that actually changed in the final version of the ROM. And he said it actually, this entire board here had actually been shrunk down to fit into a CoCo 2 case. That was what the final Deluxe was going to be. This is a CoCo 1 size case. And that satellite board with the 4 8K ROMs, if you've seen it already, that would have been a single 32K chip. And all the extra functionality would have been there. And as you're seeing on the splash screen here. Question? Yes, Mark Siegel basically gave him a spec of what he wanted added into it, and then Microsoft was directly working on it and supposedly finished it, because the thing was basically a week away from production when they canceled it. And this is also part of the reason that Mark thinks that they refused to do the CoCo 3 Basic, because they never got paid for all this because they never sold it. Yeah. Yeah, so basically that's why Microsoft said, screw you can do your own thing with the CoCo 3 Basic. By the way, you can't change the ROMs. So Micro had to do the whole patch job. But as you can see on here, it was 0.0.7, so this is an early one. But the first thing you'll notice that's different besides the copyrights 1984 is this little type F1 for basic, F2 for disk. And the F2 for disk is basically the equivalent of the DOS command, so if you have a disk in the drive, it'll actually boot up like OS 9 or Sands of Egypt or whatever that was built to use the DOS command, and F1 takes you to basic. Now, one of the things it actually has as an advantage, and this is one that Mark has mentioned, and if you guys have seen the little blurbs about the Deluxe Color Computer and the CoCo 2 manuals, you'll have seen some references to a RAM drive. Because these machines came with 64K of RAM, period. There was no other options as far as RAM. You always got the 32K ROM. You always got the AY sound chip. You always got the hardware RS-232 port. That was just standard across the board. It was supposed to retail in the fall, winter of 1984 for $399. Yeah. 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 And you'll notice the cursor is different. Like once we get it booted up, if you're used to the rainbow cursor, as we call it on the CoCo, if you remember the MC10, it just blinks a black cursor, if I remember correctly. That's what this has. It actually has a black cursor. It doesn't have. It's blue on the terminal program, but it's not. Yeah. So, you want to see if you can. I'll just hold it here if you want to talk.
Oh, yeah. So I'm using a GoTech to simulate the drive, so I don't have to. Let's see here. So I think this one should work. So yeah, if I was to press F2 here, it's going to. It should, if it's as long as it's not. Yep. Yep. There it is. OS 9. So it's as if you had the disk and drive and you actually just typed in DOS. It's actually executing the DOS right now, as long as it's not. If I got the right version. I can't remember if I had the right version of this one or not. It should have been a little bit farther than this. Yeah, this one might have froze here.
According to Mark Siegel, yes.
Well, this was in progress. I'm thinking the TLS 9 was because, like Candy said, your Microsoft off my screen and they just had to finish the code yet. So.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah.
Does it have a real-time clock?
No. It does have an extra timer interrupt added in. Come on. No, it's not a code. It's not one you can set. The timer function here is an extra 60 hertz interrupt, and there's a new option control register that controls that and a few other things. I don't know, like the phase shift and a few other things. I don't know. We haven't really figured that out yet because we have to really go through the board to figure out. The standard VSync is on the PIAs and the VDG, but this is an extra source that's been added. The PIA ones are still there. There's new time string and a few other timer functions, but the main timer is from Extended Basic. Okay, that's fine. I will mention for OS 9, there is a deluxe version of OS 9 that was actually pulled from the micro archives before they destroyed the disks. And I'm going to be working on trying to get that working with Brian. So what you're going to be seeing here is OS 9 Level 1 version 2, which was one for the CoCo 2 as well. This is not the deluxe version of OS 9. That it does exist. We have to assemble it because it's just source code. No, I have the copies of them. Boise and Alan Huffman got them out of Microware before they decided to take them out to into a field and shoot them. Literally, that's what happened with the hard drive from the gimmicks, yes. Well, with a gun. They took it out for target practice. Literal. Because it was just old junk to them. This was a never released product. Who cares, right? Yeah, you can hit it. Okay, the first thing you'll notice here when we go to basic is you've got a black blinking cursor. It looks like an MC10, doesn't it? That does the DOS on the disk. Now, do you want to show them our RAM drive that's part of the built-in? Yeah.
So one of the things that the Deluxe has is that built into the ROM is that it has a RAM drive that's built into it. It's drive 4 and it's 12 granules in size. So in theory you could have something that would boot up and it could actually copy stuff, or you could copy stuff to the RAM drive and be using it. You know.
Bit less than that. A normal drive is 68 granules, so 12. One of you math wizards can do the 68 divided by 12 in your head. I'm not going to bother. Basically what it does is it takes 32K of RAM. Now, unlike a lot of RAM drives that basically they copy the CoCo ROMs into RAM mode and then patch it to add into RAM drives, so you're running in RAM mode all the time. The 32K ROM in the Deluxe stays as ROM. And there's an extra part of the option control registers you can actually map in an alternate chunk of 16K, and the RAM drive driver maps in the extra 32K into regular RAM space, leaving half of it normal and half of it the special section, so we can access the RAM drive while the ROMs are still enabled, so you don't lose any of that, and you don't have to patch the ROMs at all. Yeah. Or if you accidentally CLS9 and cold restart the machine. Anything from 9 to 255 cold resets. Anything 256 and above, I think, gives you an FC error. It doesn't have that little hidden Microsoft message or anything, which would have been cute, but they didn't do that. At least not in this early version. I'm assuming that was a bug they just hadn't fixed yet. But yeah, you can see it's quite fast if you load off the RAM drive. I mean, if you only had a tape system, you can copy stuff from the RAM drive and start doing your development and testing on there, which would be pretty fast. Yeah, it's 0.895 megahertz. No. No. That was a Microware thing. That wasn't a Microsoft thing. But one thing I will say, like we'd seen these hints about there's a RAM drive, there's a new full screen editor that you can use for editing basic programs and stuff, which is something a lot of people were missing back in the day because some other 8-bit machines had them, which I will let Brian demonstrate that.
Well, I'm probably good. I'll hold it. Yeah, you want to hold it there? Yeah.
I'm going to sit in the floor of this and I'm walking. I'm the gopher now.
So one of the things that Curtis was just talking about was the full screen editor. So here's my program that says, you know, print high. I can hold down the Alt key, and I can now arrow up and arrow over, and I can change high to hello. Where's my? And now if I do a list, there's the modification there. So yep. So if I arrow, if I go up here, oops. So yeah, you.
There isn't any.
So he used his code from Commodore.
Yep. Oh yeah. So if I wanted to, I could come up here. And if I wanted to, let's say I want to put another L in, whoop, oh, see what happens? See it locked up on me? So
Okay, show's over, folks. Go home.
No, so unfortunately, one of the things that this ROM board, if you saw the bottom of it, it was actually a handmade board, probably by one of the, I'm guessing maybe Radio Shack engineers. And this thing does lock up from time to time. You notice I got the fan blowing on it because it runs awfully hot. But I've narrowed it down to this board where if I just like tap, or in this case here I'm just typing maybe a little too heavy, it'll lock up on me. So it's not it definitely wasn't a final machine by any stretch. That,
We did do it first try.
yep, we've tried that. We haven't got that far yet, but yep.
The Rick Adams treatment, yeah.
Didn't it change the screen color to blue though?
So if I wanted to edit this line here, then I could hit Alt, arrow over, and then do Alt I. You can see how it bumped everything over, and then I can drop it down there.
And Alt D will do delete.
If I do Alt B,
What was that? Oh, yeah, that's another thing. The Color Deluxe does have RF out and composite out, both audio and video. Currently, we're using an HDMI adapter, which Brian can explain more about than I can.
So yes, this does have composite output, just like the CoCo 3 had. Unfortunately, it's not working. Something is amiss. I haven't had a chance to really dig into it from the hardware, but that's one of my things is to work on to see if it ever worked or if the signal is just getting lost between the video chip and the output there. But we'll get it sometime here. So what I'm having to do is I'm using the RGB to HDMI adapter that maybe some of you have seen that used on the CoCo 1, 2. It can be used on the CoCo 3, and because we have the same chip here, the 6847, I'm just tapping in directly into the 6847 so I can get the HDMI output. If not, the only output I have would be the RF signal. What's that? Well, it's like an early version. We kind of narrowed it down with the based on the chip dates. It's a date that's close to the original 6847, but it's not right exactly with the CoCo 2 and the T1 version of that. It's like somewhere in between, and we're maybe speculating that maybe Motorola was in the process of developing that version of the T1 video chip, because the date codes on here don't put it anywhere in between there. So yeah. What's that? Not yet. No, because I need to double check the pinout on this one to make sure that the addressing lines are the same. So, but I've tried to avoid doing any actual like hardware hacking testing on this thing. So, so yes. Yep.
I just want to mention here, like, if you guys have played with the actual T1, you've got options not just for lowercase, but you also have inverse video, and you can also fill the border, so it's a green color. Not all of those are present on this T1. The lowercase bit is, but the inverse video, that one might be. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know for a fact the border one is not on this version of the T1. Yeah, because we're trying to figure out why is this T1 have a few features that the T1 we all know and love is, and it doesn't have others, and that's because it was made like 2 years before the T1 that we know, and it's made after the original VDG, so it's kind of a hybrid, kind of in between one. Now for the lowercase test, if you're going to see it, I will mention the font's a little bit different, but Brian, if you want to do a Shift 0 and just type in some letters or whatever. And then just enter, yeah, and then do screen. Oh, we have to put in. Oh no, no, it accepts lowercase commands. I should mention that too. That's another feature. Yep. So that they took an existing command and added a feature to it. So now you can actually set it to screen 1, and you can still do the comma 1, the other option for the color set and stuff too. So that's still in there. So screen -1 is true lowercase, screen 0 is inverse lowercase, and screen 1, of course, is your graphic screen like it was in previous versions. And the entire basic accepts lowercase commands. You can mix upper and lowercase all you want, and all the commands are accepted, including all the new ones. Yeah, there's a bunch of new tokens for the new commands, which we'll get into in a bit. I believe so. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, because it tokenizes. Not without software, though. This is the VDG is still the VDG. It's still 32-bit. Adds the new stuff in the gimme. The gimme's handling all that, yeah. I mean, at this time, Radio Shack was starting to look in their express order third-party stuff that you could order like a Word Pack 2 and get an 80-column card that way, which you could eventually get for the CoCo 2 as well. So I think they were leaving that for that type of operation. If I remember correctly, it specifically checks to see if you're doing a text mode change, like true lowercase or not, and that is sticky, but the graphic screen will still kick out unless you pause it, yeah. Or do the poke to disable the print hook. Well, I mean, there's several other deluxes in existence, which Boise has, and he got from, I think, Prickett had one, and was it Greg Zumwalt had the other one, but neither of those had these ROMs. That's unique to this machine, because they recalled all the other ones. And from what Mark had said, some of the ones that were sent to the developers didn't even have the new ROMs. They just had stock CoCo ROMs in them, like the standard 16K extended basic, because they wanted people to develop for the new hardware in the machine and not write basic programs. You're not going to get Greg Zumwalt to go write a basic game in 1984. You're going to... Who? Boise has all those. So once we can get a ROM burn, like Ryan did try to do a brief burn of a 32K ROM and it didn't work. So we're not sure if maybe you have to flip the blocks of 8K. Maybe they aren't in order or something. We haven't had a chance to try that yet. But once we get that working, yeah, we'll send it so that we'll at least have 3 machines up and running with the new. But like we said, this is buggy. This has got some pretty bad, nasty bugs in it. So this is definitely an revision. Yeah, the hardware's the same. So I think Boise and you kind of looked over it, and it is the same, correct? Yeah.
Boise has pictures up on his blog site, and they look very similar to this one. So they have the same chip that's glued upside down and has all the bodge wires going to it and everything. So there's no reason why, if we can get a working set of advanced basic ROMs in his, that it wouldn't work the same way as this one.
Quite a bit, actually. This command you just saw, the screen -1, like we knew it had a lowercase t1 VDG, and I figured there's got to be a way to do it in BASIC. You wouldn't force us to do it, like a heathen and poke stuff. And he actually told us try screen -1, so he remembered that, and we tried it. Yep, it worked. And there's a few commands he's actually remembered that he's told us about. Now, one thing I'll mention on the editing thing, there's quite a few keys that are in the editor. So the Alt arrows, of course, move your cursor around. Alt I insert, Alt D deletes a character. Alt E will delete the characters after cursors at the end of the line on the screen. Alt H will bump the cursor to the upper left corner of the screen, so home is the cursor basically. If you're in the editor, the right arrow will actually tab 8 characters at a time. So if you're trying to go across, you don't have to sit there and tap the Alt right arrow. You can just bang, 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 and then Alt arrow to the specific character. Yep. Control I, Control left arrow. Should move the cursor left and clear the character under it. Yeah, so destructive backspace. Shift left arrow, or Control U. So there's some Control key equivalents of some of the Shift keys as well. Break will abort editing and put the cursor to the bottom left of the screen. Control L will abort editing and clear the screen at the same time. So you can have a shortcut for a CLS or a home, basically. And Enter will commit the line if you've done some editing. Now, at first we thought that this, because the basic manual, the extended basic manual for the CoCo 2, I should say, with those little green blurbs on the side about the deluxe CoCo, had mentioned when they're talking about the edit command that you don't need to do that. Just check your deluxe manual. You can use the new editing. But there is still an edit command in here. I don't know if that made the final version, but you can tell it to edit a line number, and it'll clear the screen, put that line on, and then you're editing it. So if you do type in edit just by habit, you actually just get it on the screen. You can edit it using the new keys, but you can still use that shortcut. Yeah. So it's nice and easy to see, so you're not in the middle of stuff that's on the screen. Third party, I mean, some of the extended DOS and stuff did add new commands, like ADOS 3 obviously does ADOS, ADOS extended, JDOS, CDOS, a bunch of them. So yeah, a lot of other people did, but they always added to the disk basic ROM, so you're kind of limited how much room you can have. This was a complete merging of basic like a regular color basic, extended basic, disc basic, which is built into this too. You don't need it if you got a disc controller. Mark Siegel has mentioned Tandy was planning on selling a cheaper disc controller for the Deluxe because it doesn't need the ROM at all. No royalties to Microsoft. You just need the controller chip, plug it in, and away you went, because it's built right into the machine. And then there's an extra 8K of all the new stuff they've added. Did you have the sound demo from? So a couple of things. The AY chip, of course, is the sound chip that was used on a lot of computers at the time. It's a multi-voice, hardware-based sound chip. And they added a couple of new commands to BASIC, one of which changed from what Marcus said to the very last version of, like the official version. But there's a tone, and you can control up to 3 voices at once with that, and there's a noise for doing, like whooshing sounds and that kind of stuff, and that's all in BASIC now. And it runs in the background, so once you fire it up, that tone plays, and your BASIC program's back to running. So no pauses while you're, moving graphics around or something. Yeah. I thought you said nude. Mule. Yep, just hit enter. You don't need the dot base.
Well, I'm trying to type light.
And from what we've seen in the code there, the new tone and the new noise commands are using that new vertical sync 60 hertz signal to time them, not the old one. The light command and sound command still use the PIA one. We haven't quite figured out why there's two and what the difference is. They both seem to be 60 hertz interrupts, so.
Oh, that don't look good.
Alan kind of put this together. He just put all this color up on there. No, what's that? No, Exile. Robert Allen. He threw it up there, and then he's just slamming a whole bunch of music right to the AY3 chip on there while it's doing the simultaneously basic, Right.
Now it glitched out.
Yeah. Well, no. I figured it break something. Right. This is the noise generator.
Yeah. That was excellent noise.
So that was all basic.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do full chords with 3 voices, and you have a noise channel on top of it, so if you want to fake little drum beats or something like that, all in software, all in BASIC, and that all runs in the background while your BASIC program is doing other things, which is awesome. $399 US. Yep, in the fall of '84. It's supposed to go on time. They were hoping to get it on time for getting out the school specials like for September, but it was more meant to be a Christmas release. The CoCo 3, I'm trying to remember what the States price was. Was it $219 for the 128K? But that was several years later. That was in late '86. And this has features that CoCo 3 doesn't have. Well, for example, sound chip. It also has an R32 chip. The 6551's built right in with a 9-pin serial port in the back, and a terminal program built in the ROM, so you didn't even have to buy one just to get online. Which we'll not too much to show here, but we'll show you a little bit of it. Yeah, I think '84 the regular CoCos were in Korea at the time already. Yeah, they're probably there. It'd be like Apple, where it's designed in the States and built wherever the hell it's cheapest. Was this one poking stuff in, Brian? Do you know, or is he actually using sound playing tone? Oh, he just had a table of all the frequencies for notes and stuff. It looks like. This actually has an envelope programming thing too that has 5 parameters. We haven't quite figured out how that syntax is. From what I was able to tell just before the fest when I last looked at it, it looks like each is treated as a 16-bit number split into half, and one's for the AY command register and one's for the AY data register, and I haven't got... What? Sorry? For the envelope stuff? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, but there's an envelope command that is for programming the 8Y chip, and it's got 5 parameters. Each are 16-bit parameters. Looking in the ROM, it looks like it takes the 16 bits and splits it into 2 halves, one for the command register and one for the data register. But I haven't quite figured out what exactly is what. So if you see up there on line 160, you can see if C equals 9, then noise. So he's programming the noise channel at that point. And then else tone. So we're actually programming the tone, so you can actually do the multi-voice. Yeah, I kind of wish this had come out too. I'll give you one story that Mark Siegel told us, is that they'd made, I think, 5,000 circuit boards. They hadn't populated them yet, but the boards were made. The chips were ordered. The keyboards obviously went on sale later, the Deluxe. And it was about a week before the release date that they started having problems with Motor, saying we can't make enough chips because we have to make enough to keep the MC10 going. We have to enough for the CoCo 2, which is starting to sell like hotcakes. And then the Deluxe. And then they asked Mark, do you think this Deluxe will sell enough to warrant, shifting from something else? And Mark said yes. And I'm sure the rest of us in this room would have said yes if they'd ever asked us. But upper management at Tandy was not confident that a brand new product that was more expensive than the existing one, and the CoCo 2 is about to drop in price, would be a bigger price gap, was this going to sell? Because there's no small version or a low version of the Deluxe. You paid for everything up front, that's all you got. There was one model. And Mark said he estimated to Tandy that we could probably sell 200,000 of these by Christmas. And I think he's right. I think they would have. But they decided not to take the risk. The CoCo 2 is a proven commodity, was selling like hot. Christmas season, it always sold really well. And they weren't sure that people were going to spend the extra money to buy a Deluxe. Well, this is the tail end. Like, honestly, the MC10 I would have thought would have already been dying at this point, but apparently maybe that was before the transition where it kind of died off, so maybe they thought this is much cheaper manufactured, it's much more of a profit margin compared to the Deluxe, because they put a lot of stuff in here. Yeah, yeah. Tandy was always concerned with cost. So the fact that this was going to cost $400 US, and when the CoCo 2 was selling at that point, what, 220 or something like that was a pretty big jump. And then they were worried they were not going to sell. Like, if you're going to spend that much money, you might be getting a much higher end machine. I'm guessing that's what they thought. I'm planning for next year. I'm going to try to get the Deluxe version of OS 9 because it had a lot of extra features, Basic 9 to handle the sound chip and a bunch of other things. I'm going to try to get that running for next year. So come back next year, folks. Okay, coming to the next VCF Midwest. No, I'm just kidding. You do that too, but. Pardon me? But it's possible, but there's not enough of them around to really hand out for development. Yeah. Well, I mean, because we've got people reverse engineering Dragons and making new motherboards, and we've got people reverse engineered CoCo 3s and CoCo 2s and CoCo 1s with new motherboards, maybe we can make Deluxes. Now, I was going to plug in to show a little document I have, but I'll just put it up in Discord later. I'll just read from it so you guys can get an idea. So there's a whole bunch of extra basic commands. You've seen a few extra options on some commands, but I'll mention a few here. You notice that we did device number 4, drive 4 is the RAM disk. There's also a device number 3, like if you do a print number -1, that's cassette number -2 is printer. Number -3 is for the hardware RS-232 port. So you can actually send stuff out through the RS-232 port. One that Brian can just demo a very brief bit of it is a built-in terminal program that actually goes off of that. So if you type term, it immediately clears the screen, and now the cursor's changed. That's to indicate you're in the terminal program versus basic, so you instantly know. And this is not the final version. From what Mark said, there is a very simple download protocol that was added in later, which is not present in this version. But basically, this is emulating most of a video text terminal as used by CompuServe. So you could do like cursor positioning and clear the end of the line. There's even an identifier string. If you send a certain sequence to it, it'll report back what version it is. So Videotex terminals and CoCo 1s and 2s, Videotex cartridges and other machines like Apples and stuff that ran on Vidtex would return certain strings. There's a unique one for the Deluxe CoCo so that CompuServe could tell you were on the Deluxe and maybe change things around as how it was being used. VT52 partially with some extensions CompuServe did, and also missing a lot of the VT52, so it's kind of a weird hybrid. I do know what some of the stuff that's in the OSINT stuff because we've actually found some documentation of Mark Siegel writing back to Mark Hawkins at Microware, and they're going back and forth of what they want changed and what they want added and stuff. So, yeah, there was some nice stuff in there, but I'll save that for next year. And if you're not here next year, well, there's your incentive. Okay, so here he broke out of it, so there's a key sequence to get out of that. Another part that is buggy but is somewhat present is there a thing for basic programs called protected mode. So if you've used a save command before, csave, and I think this only works in the disk version, you can do save, A for ASCII mode, for example. So save the raw ASCII of your program, not the tokenized tokens. The protected mode basically, I haven't figured exactly how it works yet, but basically it makes it so that you can never list that program again, even if you load it, shut the machine off, load it up later. If it's in protected mode, it'll load it, won't let you list, it won't let you edit, but it'll run. But it's flaky right now in this version. But from what Mark said, it was fully optional. Yeah, yeah. Basically, you can't pirate the code if you save it in protected mode. You don't have to. You can save it regular and it just runs like normal, like he was showing here with Alan's demo. Sorry? Yeah, they could use that, and then you would not be able to. I'm sure ML hackers would have fixed that in a big hurry, but out of the box, it would not have been easy to copy or list those or cheat. Like you can't go into the game and like edit your number of men because you can't do anything. Mark Siegel mentioned that one. He said there was a common piece. He said he couldn't remember if it was in this early version of ROM. We tried it. It does kind of work, but it does crash and flake out at times. If it is working and you try to do a list or an edit, it'll give you a PP error, protected program error. That's one of the new error codes they added. I didn't name it. One brief thing, of course, there's new ASCII codes for all the new keys because this has basically the equivalent of a CoCo 3 keyboard. It was designed specifically so that between the Alt and the Control keys, you can generate, first of all of the first 7 bits, 0 to 127 character codes from the keyboard directly. You don't have to use print character strings. The Alt gives you a lot of the high bit characters. One that was kind of cute, though, is that the what code do you think they would have returned for the new function keys? Any guesses? So what's that? Nope. Close. No. So the function keys, as you've seen on the CoCo 3 keyboard, it's the same on the Deluxe, are labeled F1 and F2. So what do they return? Hex value F1 and F2. Nice and easy to remember. Grown. They've also added on-air go-to, which we did get on the CoCo 3, but this one's a bit more extensive. So on-air go-to a line number, we all know about that. ERR returns the error number. ERL will return the line number that the error happened. But they've also got a resume, and you can tell it to resume the program where it left off, or you can give it a specific line number, and the program after the error trap will resume at that line number, so you can instantly jump depending on what the error was. So that was actually nice, and they did not put that functionality in the CoCo 3 version. Yes. There's also the error command itself. It's not just part of on-air. You can actually force an error to help test your program. Basic 09, if you guys are familiar with that, obviously has the same thing where you can force an error to test. So you can do that as well. So many people have been through the CoCo 3 ROMs, we would have found it by now. Yeah. For those of... They just come naturally to you, right? Another one that, for those that are familiar with Pascal or Basic 9 that's been added is the while command. So we've got while and when, W-end, and you can actually do while loops now, as well as for-next loops. Well, you need go sub. Tone actually has 3 options. You've got the channel number, 1 to 3. You've got the tone period, which is the pitch. There's 4,095 pitches to pick from. And amplitude is your volume, and there was 16 volumes with 0 being completely off. So you could actually stop running the background, just turn the volume off, and then immediately turn it back on, and leave the note the same. Not unless we can actually get it working. The basic is buggy. I mean, you can crash the machine doing stuff there. That's the plan, yeah. I'm going to keep talking to Mark, too, because it sounds like a few things were changed that are not on this ROM at all. So this is definitely not even close to the final one. The noise is basically similar. It's got several patterns that you can pick from by default, and then change the amplitude and stuff, the volume. And if you guys have played with the speech sound pack, it's the same chip, so you can basically do everything on there in here. That stupid pick chip in the middle is slowly down, yeah. The environment one I kind of covered. There's 5 16-bit integers, and this is actually controlling, not the environment, sorry, envelope. We haven't got the full details on that one yet. One of the best things for basic programmers that I'll mention, there's a couple commands to support this functionality, and this is not in CoCo 3 Basic whatsoever either. There's chain. You can chain to another program. Well, we've already got run to another program in BASIC, which is fine. So when we first saw it, I was trying to figure out what this basically does the same thing as a run. What's the point? Well, actually, it has an extra comma. There's an extra comma line number. So if you have an if-then statement in your program to run another program afterwards, you can tell it, just run it from the beginning. Or if this certain variable set, start on line 100, skip the first 99 lines. You can actually tell it to run a program at a direct line number. That's the next one they added. There's another command called common. Now, from what Marcus said, I think this one was pretty radically changed. So what it has here is you do common, then you do a variable list, and you can list real numbers or arrays, and you do an array by the name of the array, open parentheses, close parentheses, and sends the entire array over. And whatever ones you put after the common command will be kept by the new program automatically as soon as it fires up. And any ones you skip, return to the free space pool, and you can use them for whatever else. So you can actually just keep the variables you want. This version does not support string passing whatsoever. From what Marcus said, that was fixed in the final version. You could pick strings, numbers, arrays, it didn't matter. Terminal program we kind of covered already. Fairly simple one. Oh, just for the trivia folks out there, the escape I response sequence to identify the video text terminal type was number sign, or pound sign I guess they call it now, RSE, CC, 74. The CC obviously stands for color computer. I have no idea what the hell the rest of it is, though RS I'm assuming is Radio Shack. And Mark did mention there was a download protocol that was added to it. That's not in here at all. It's a very, very simple program. Now, for programming the serial port, they added a whole bunch of stuff. First of all, there's a 128-byte receive buffer in there, so if your basic program is busy and stuff's still coming in, it actually multitasks in the background using the interrupt and will actually capture up to 128 characters while you're busy catching up on everything else. And it's a round circle buffer, so you can go through it. And if it does get full, it tries to send a pause using, I think, CTS, RTS, if I remember correctly, to basically tell the guy, I'm way up here, I'm not ready yet. But there's multiple other basic commands to configure the port. So there's the config command itself. And right now you specify the device number. So -3, as I mentioned before, is the serial port, the hardware serial port. I don't know if they were planning using the config command for, say, the bit banger or some of the other stuff here too. It doesn't seem to work now, but they did allow you to specify the device. I'm guessing they probably would have expanded this. And this one has 5 parameters. The first one is the baud rate, which can go anywhere from 50 to 19,200. The second is a parity, and you can do no parity, odd parity, even parity, mark parity, space parity. You have word lengths 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 1 or 2 stop bits. And that has some defaults, and I think it defaults is 600 baud, 8N1 or something like that. 2, for those of you who are familiar with the CoCo 1 and 2, we have a thing called the speed up poke. So they've actually added a new command called map mode, which is kind of the dumbest way to name a speed up poke I've ever seen, but well, that's what they did. And basically you can set it to be all 0.895 megahertz, just like a normal boot up. Or if you do map mode 1, it'll kick it into high-speed ROM mode. Now, the advantage here, if you've done modifications to BASIC on a 64K CoCo, you've copied stuff to RAM, the speed up poke no longer does anything for you because you're running a completely RAM mode. Because this stays in ROM mode, even with RAM drives and everything else, because the way it does the mapping, everything stays sped up. Now, of course, if you guys have fiddled with that, you find out that, disk writing is not quite reliable, and cassettes are running at the wrong speed, and tones that you're playing in sound command stuff are all coming out wrong. The bit banger printer drivers coming out wrong. Well, the map mode command actually has little hooks all over the place in BASIC to fix that. It drops down to normal speed to do any of those commands and kicks it right back in high speed when it's done. So you don't have to change any printer settings. You don't have to change any sound settings to get everything to run exactly like you're expecting it to. But the rest of BASIC runs at full throttle 2-speed. They added the XOR command, so we already had the logical operators and not and or. Now we have XOR, so you can use that as well. Kind of a minor one, but it's nice. There's a couple new time-related stuff that they've added, 2 new commands, time itself and time string. And time string can be both something to read or to write to. So it has a 24-hour clock, and you can probably do a print time string just to kind of show if you can fire it up. You get too much heat from the flaking. Time string. T-I-M-E string. This is not quite a real-time clock. It's real-time, but it's basically just a software clock. There's nothing in there to keep it track of it. Okay. Have you looked, Brian, to see if the RS-232 chip 6551 has its own crystal? He's looking right now. Yeah, I don't know if they were thinking that far ahead back then. So anyway, what this is it's basically a 24-hour timer that wraps around automatically. So it just keeps running 0 to 2300, 5959. Now you can print it, and if you have a program that you want to keep track of timestamps, you can do that, date or just timestamps. But you can also set it with time string equals, and you can actually fill in the value yourself. And there's also a new time, which is similar to the timer. And this will report the number of 1/60th of a second clock ticks since you've initialized it. So you can actually say, you know, I'm 14,000 seconds after you started. So if you want to do real-time controlling of, say, using an X10 controller lamps or something like that, you can actually base it on the time of day instead of having to calculate, you know, what things. So several things to support that. For those programming games, there's a couple of things. One's a hardware edition, which we also got in the CoCo 3. The joystick ports support the second button. So this was the first CoCo that ever had a 2-button joystick or 2-button mouse. And they also added, and now from what Marcus said, they actually stripped this command down later. I'm hoping he's wrong because that would have been dumb. But there's the S-trig, which I think means shot trigger. So the current button state, I mean, on the CoCo 1 and 2, you do a print peak to figure out if the button's down or up. On the CoCo 3, they made a button command, which will return whether, you know, button 1's up, button 2's up, that type of thing. So there's 8 options, 8 options you can pick for S-trig. 4 of them operate the same as they currently do, basically, is the button up or down, and which button is it on which joystick port. But they had another one where it would actually tell you, have you clicked the button, let go, and then clicked it again. So basically to prevent rapid fire. So the normal one will do rapid fire. You can hold it down and stay 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, telling you that it's there. The other one, you click it, it'll go 1 briefly and go back to 0 until you let go and press it again. So you can force the player to have to hit the fire button every time without doing a bunch of weird programming to do that. It's actually built right into the ROM. So for game writers, that was a kind of a nice option. Sorry, what was that? Yeah, you can do time string equals and change it to whatever time you want. There's no dates or anything. It's not a real-time clock. But there's a new command, input string, which is a little bit different than regular input. And what this one does is it has some extra parameters. You actually have a string equals input string, and then you put in parentheses which device number it's going to be coming from. So you can use an RS-232 port, or you can use the keyboard or a file or whatever. And the second option is how many characters do you want to read at once? So this is almost like doing random access files in a way off the keyboard. But you can say, I want to get a keyboard response that's 3 characters long exactly. Say a password or something like that. So the person would actually type in, as soon as they hit the 3rd character in, the input string gets the string variable assigned to it, and you're done. So it actually does a truncated length, and it doesn't have to wait for an enter key or anything like that. It's just automatic. Now, going through from what the Steve Bjork documentation, because he had a little press release ready to go from when the Deluxe was going to be released, because like everybody else, he thought it was going to be out. Roger Taylor has this now. There does seem to be some changes. So first of all, there's a new stat command that's not in here that would have returned the status of the 6551 chip, but I don't know exactly what it entails because he didn't give any details on it. The tone command was apparently renamed to become the sing command for playing musical notes versus noise effects. Now, the one I just mentioned that if it did happen, I'm disappointed, is the S-trig was changed to only have straight button up and straight button down and not have to let the programmer decide you get rapid fire or not, which was built into the old one, so I'm hoping he was wrong. The common command for chaining was having the ability to handle strings instead of just numerics and arrays. Protected mode obviously was working without crashing. The error numbers were fixed up because there's some error numbers, like there's big gaps between the error numbers, and the final version would have had contiguous ones. And even some of the ones that are in there now are different than they would have been in the regular ROMs because they screwed up the tables. I actually found where they inserted garbage by accident or something. So if you'd written something for handling errors yourself by looking at the basic error where it saves the errors when they happen, they would have been the wrong errors anyway, so you'd been triggering completely wrong things. So that would have been fixed up. The one thing that Mark did mention, and I don't believe the Steve Bjork really verifies, is like right now a whole bunch of routines are moved. So if you had any code that was trying to call direct basic ROM routines, almost nothing is in the same place as it used to be. So backwards compatibility would have sucked. From what Mark said, they actually, once they got everything finished, because they were basically just opening up these big gaps to give themselves room to add stuff. Once they finished all that, they kind of recompressed everything back down and tried to make it as backwards compatible as possible. And he said they had got about an 80-90% rate. Like the CoCo tree has a few little issues like that too, where certain ROM calls don't work, but that would have been mostly fixed up when the final ones happened. And of course, the big thing is this would have all been shrank from a CoCo 1 case to a CoCo 2 size case. So that's what's in the basic. There's some other things too. We've discovered how to change the key. Oh, key repeat. You can show that. Yeah.
Well, I'm just holding the key down right now.
Yeah. Now, there's nothing in BASIC to change the key repeat speed or the key repeat start delay, like how long you have to hold the key before it does. But there's a couple pokes I just figured out, I think, on Tuesday, so you can actually change it. So if you want to change the key repeat delay value of how long it takes to do, and these are measured in 1/60th of a second, it's poke end HA00, comma whatever value you want, and then we won't do that one. We'll do the speed one. So poke end H ampersand H 9FF, and the default here is 30 half a second. You want to see it run faster or slower? Okay, put comma 5. And hold the key down. A little bit faster. Oh, did I have them backwards? That's quite entirely possible. Anyway, don't put a. You can also disable key repeat with a poke too. Don't put the default start value before the delay to the absolute lowest, because then every time you tap a key, even lately, you'll get 3. It's almost like having key bounce built in. So I wouldn't recommend that one. Don't set the start delay too short. I was hoping that there was going to be a basic command to set that, because that would have been nice. And I talked to Mark. He said, "Nah, they never bothered with that." So anyway, this documentation we've been kind of doing. This is an ongoing thing. So as we discover more things, we'll be adding to it. But I'll be posting this version on Discord once I get back home. And if you guys want to take a look, and then if you guys want to try the Deluxe, of course, you can't physically get one. I'm pretty sure Brian won't give you one. But Tim Linder has added, because he's been part of the whole assembly thing, he's actually got MAME, the latest 2 versions of MAME, I think 2.6.2 and 2.6.3 or something. Whatever the last 2 versions are, does have the MAME ROMs. The MAME ROMs you can get in the Color Computer Archive. The hardware is all linked up to go. The other thing we're not entirely sure is entirely right is the new option control register. We're pretty sure most of it's right. There's 1 or 2 bits in there we're not sure of. But almost everything, including the basic, works on that. If you guys want to fiddle around with it, it supports the sound chip already built into it. It supports the RS-2 and everything else. Have fun. Yep. If you can get it to work, sure. Oh, I don't know if I have that written down here. No, I didn't. You're talking about the phase shift? Yeah, I didn't have that written down. Shoot. I won't mention it. Okay, Brian just reminded me of something, and this is actually that the something that the OS 9 for the Deluxe also supported. There's an alternate color set you can use for your text. I mean, we're used to the green, dark green one, which you're seeing now. There's also the dark red and the kind of yellowish orange one, the 0,1 screen. This one also added a phase shift to try to get something a little bit easier to see, and it actually creates a blue background with sort of purplish characters, almost more like a Commodore 64 color set. And this was just a poke using a phase shift control bit in that new control register. And OS 9 for the Deluxe defaulted to turning that on instead of green. From what Marcus said, there was no basic command to do it here, but there is a poke that can do it that I can't remember. I do know you have to disable the printout because it keeps resetting it anyway. But Brian's going to look to see if he can find, I think he has a photo of what the screen looks like so we can kind of see. We'll do the questions after. I have nothing else to talk about. Okay. So while he's looking for that, if you guys have any questions, I will mention that the Deluxe did support this by boot default. I don't think it had anything to let you change it. That was going to be the Deluxe's default color set for text. But they did have Basic 09 was extended. The GFX2 module added all the support for the AY chips. All that stuff worked in Basic 09 too. You can run the background sound and everything else too. I'll stand up here so I can see hands better. No, there was only, this is a prototype board. I don't know what the final board looked like, except it was much smaller. And it was a single ROM instead of this whole satellite board thing. Probably less baud wires, I'm guessing. Okay, I'll do John, then Steve. Yeah, exactly the same. Except the phase shift does affect the colors on the regular P mode, so you different artifact colors. If you want to get the purples and greens instead of the reds and blues, that's how you did it. Steve. Yeah, that's NTSC. Yep. Yeah. No, like once you do the phase shift, the entire VDG output changes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. 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 Like for like PAL for Europe or something? I'm assuming that it had gone in production, they would have had to deal with that later. It never got that far. Well, there wouldn't have been artifacting because PAL doesn't support artifacting, so that whole thing we just discussed wouldn't have been there. But you did still have composite out, so you had better quality sound. And, of course, audio out, too. You still have the RF. You could still run the RF can. If you guys look at the case here, or come by and take a look at the case, basically the bottom of the case is a standard 64K color computer case. The top one is a 64K color computer case with a bunch of hand-cut chunks of the plastic out to fit all the new ports. So they hadn't even finalized the plastic molds yet at this point. I'll get to John in a second. That's what Mark said. You see, Mark said that he had the final version on his desk with the fully done ROMs, the shrunken case, still had the Deluxe keyboard in it, and it was up and running and going. Small case, is what he said, yep. And once the project was canceled, like a good Radio Shack employee, he got rid of it with all the rest of the stuff. John. Yep. I will be putting them up in Discord as soon as I get home. I didn't bring the file with me. I just got the print up, but I will be putting it up this week. Come out this upcoming week. You got your hand up, Steve, or are you just yawning? Brendan. Yeah, -2 is already there. That was the printer, but. Yes, that was what Mark said, that the DIN plug for the bit banger was meant to be for the printer still, and then the RS-232 hardware would be for RS-232 packs, but technically you could use them both as serials. DB9. Or whatever David Ladd insists that it be called something different. Anyway, go ahead. No. They added, actually. Because like that input string thing there would actually work off the bit banger too, from what I can understand. Yep. Not really, because I mean the only hint we have is when it boots up, it says 1984, copyright by Microsoft, and this was supposed to be out by the end of 1984. I'm guessing from how much is missing or not quite working, that this is probably early to mid '84 at the very latest. I would guess probably springish, but we don't have any documentation of what versions were what. Frederick? No, not static, just a 32K. Oh, sorry. RAM or ROM are you talking about? No, it's just going to be 64K RAM, standard 4164s. Though I think Mark had hinted that they were thinking about going to 4464s. Possibly that might be how they shrunk it into the CoCo 2, as well as taking the 4 ROM satellite board to 1 ROM. Sorry? Yeah, for the timer and commands and stuff, yeah. I don't think that was in the version that he had on his desk, though. That might have been a later revision. Terry?
You said that, there's still bugs and stuff on the release. You guys are editing. Is this going to be something you're going to do like open source or something?
Oh, yeah.
Because that way we all use the same code. It comes out.
Yeah. Unless Microsoft sends a cease and desist order, yeah, I plan on making it open source. And they never made money on it, so I don't know if they have much of a leg to stand on what sales they're losing. Like that's a tough one because the 32K ROM stays always mapped in the upper 32K. It's permanently there. You don't shut it off like a 64K mode. What do you do? Because the DOS is built into the ROM chip. You can still do that. So I mean, you could override it, but you'd lose the RAM drive and a few other things too. So. I think if I remember correctly, it still supports that if you want to do that. But there's also that new special RAM banking where you map in 16K chunks, whereas the normal banking in the CoCo was 32K chunks by the SAM. This new option control register has the option of doing 60K chunks at 4,000 hex, and I think that's how the RAM driver works because it just maps in whatever chunks it needs, and kind of just maps your program or whatever else is there out first, grabs the RAM drive stuff and copies it back and forth, and then kicks it back, but the ROM's always enabled as basic is set up anyway. Obviously OS 9 would have just ditched the ROMs entirely and ran it its own. Well, the question is, and I'll ask this for the developers to answer. Hi, Paul. Because this machine only has 3 in existence that we know of, even if we fix the ROMs to burn it so that Boise's also have that, the only way you're going to be able to run this unless somebody can duplicate the motherboard is in MAME. Would people like you be interested in designing brand new games for just MAME? Okay, that's an honest answer and I agree. Anybody else? Yeah, if the reproductions boards are made and they're not too expensive and we get the bugs out of the ROM, maybe. You mean like basically duplicating the hardware that's missing and putting it... I mean, you could modify a CoCo 1 or 2 to do that. Whether it's worth all that, I don't know, because we already have RS-232 packs and sound speech pack as well, so... Yep. Oh yeah, no, you fully can do the emulated right now. That's not the issue. A lot of CoCo people that do development, though, want it to run real hardware, like Nick Morenni's, Paul Thayer, myself. If it doesn't run the real hardware, then you might as well just make up a machine of whatever the hell you want. You can add whatever you want. So it's not that much fun to us. Like, maybe you're different. If you want to do it, go right ahead.
You gotta remember too that I don't like doing color.
Even with a built-in sound chip? Oh, okay.
So, with the AY chip there, Paul Shoemaker was
Yeah, because he likes doing CoCo 1 and 2 stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Look,
So not even the new phase shift, having purple and green now in B mode 4 would help?
purple and green, what are the excellent color choice.
It's like having the pastel set.
My desk is down color.
We're hoping. I mean, the one thing we don't really know. Well, there's a couple things we don't know. One, what is the clock source for the RS-232 chip? to this new option control register, which has individual bit settings for a lot of things. We figured out most of them thanks to the documentation that Robert Kilgus had. But one thing we noticed is one bit on his schematic scheme that he got from Van Chandler says this is an unused bit in the control register, yet the ROMs are setting it. So that doesn't sound unused to me, and we have no idea what that bit does. Tim doesn't either. So that's one part of the MAME that doesn't get emulated because we have no idea. We're going to have to actually trace it through the board itself to figure out what that is. No. Robert Kilgus at the very end of his CoCo career, and you'll see this when the interview comes out from Ken. Where's Ken? So Canadian Retro Things, check his channel. He's going to be releasing this probably in multiple parts because it's like 4 hours of interview. It's a fascinating history of his life. The tail end of the CoCo stuff, the last project he did for the CoCo was called OS9 Scriptset. And if you guys have seen the catalogs from that time period, you'll see an ad for it. This supported proportional text. It supported doing full justification, not only based on a word basis, but on a character basis. So if your printer had thinner I's and wider W's, it would actually adjust that. If you did indexing, it did automatic indexing with pages and table of contents. And if you inserted or deleted stuff, it would automatically recalculate all those for you on the fly. And he submitted it in, I think it was late 83 or early 84, had some changes, it came back, did that, submitted back, never heard anything else afterwards, never got sold, never got paid a penny for it. He's kind of a bit burned out by that. And at that time, Van Chandler was getting ready to leave Radio Shack, and he had always really supported Robert. And he was kind of suggesting to Robert, maybe there's another possible new jobs you can get, because I think Tandy's kind of going in a bit of a different direction now. Pardon? He's one of the higher-up guys in the computer department at Radio Shack. I can't remember his exact title off the top of my head. But basically, Robert, I think Van Chandler sent him to the Deluxe to see if he could keep him going with something new to work on. But after the burnout of Scriptset and working on that for months and then not getting paid a penny for it, even after doing requested changes, he just didn't have any interest of it. He never really touched it. I don't think he really knew what he had. When Brian went to pick it up, there was no mention of the Deluxe at all. So it wasn't until Brian got home and opened up the case, wait, what are these ports in the back? And then he realized he had a Deluxe. What's that? Yeah, and he doesn't remember using it at all. He thinks Chandler just sent it to him, and he was kind of ticked off about the whole scripts and things. He just didn't touch it. Yeah, I'll give you a bit of a sneak preview. You can get the details on Ken's videos, but there was another project he did after that that was not CoCo related. It was actually a multi-platform project. It took him 2 years to complete. Tons of changes. Had to run an Apple II, IBM PC Junior, Tandy 2000, one or two other systems. And that one he never got paid a penny for either. So his last two projects, 2.5 years of his life, basically, he didn't get paid for. And then he said, I'm done with the microcomputer industry, and he never returned after that. Pardon me? Mr. Siegel knows a bit about the Scriptset, but he doesn't remember what exactly caused it to get canceled. My guess is that there were several other word processors being submitted for OS9. TS edited by Dale Lear's one of them. And I think there was just so much competition, they just had to pick one or two. They couldn't sell them all because what's the point? And I guess Scriptset got down to the bottom of the list. That's my guess, but we don't know for sure. Okay, he's going to try to show the phase shift from the composite. A Microsoft CoCo 3 Basic. They might have even taken this as a basis for the CoCo 3 Basic and then added a bunch of new stuff. Yeah. Yeah, we've talked to Mark about that. And one thing he says, would a CoCo 3 have been developed if the Deluxe had come out? He said yes, but it wouldn't have been as soon. They were scrambling to get something new out to the market because, by '86, this is 6 years of basically the same technology, and it's way behind at this point. He would have guessed that the CoCo 4, or whatever they would have called it after the Deluxe, probably would have been at least a year or two after the CoCo 3. Or sorry, the CoCo 3 would have came out a year or two after when it originally came out, like 87, 88 type thing. Yeah. Advanced in features, some parts of it are fairly decent at it. Yeah, it emulated VG. Being able to point to any part of RAM to put a screen from was kind of nice, but it didn't have like hardware sprites or multi-plane graphics or a few other things Mark wanted to get. No. I mean, not too many home computers had that at the time, but it wasn't unique.
Just like back in the 80s now.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so this is about the best that I'm going to get for right now, guys, as far as the color goes. So this is they had the spaceship option, and let's see here if I can get that.
Brian, is that an Android phone or an Apple phone? No, is it an Apple phone or an Android? If you want to use this, you can actually plug in HDMI directly. Okay.
It's not going to be pretty, but you'll see it.
That's the option control register they added, which has a few functions. Nope, that's the sound. April Fools, everyone. Yeah, I think it is actually. Do you want to try this, Brian?
No, I just.
Because this is an HDMI adapter for the iPhone. You can actually plug in the HDMI cable directly and just show it off Discord. Yeah. You have an HDMI cable already plugged in there? You got lighting on the bottom? Okay. Or you use the Yeah, and then turn it sideways for full screen. Yeah, I mean, it's a very rough picture because the quality's really bad on this one. Anyway, while I was getting this ready here, I would definitely recommend if you're interested in this, go get the latest version of MAME, go to the Color Computer Archive and get the deluxe CoCo ROMs. You just copied in the directory. I found in my case I had actually copied the disk basic in there, even though it overrides it anyway. But once you do that, you can actually start loading disk images and try software. Robert Allen Murphy's written a couple of programs demonstrating some of the sound features on it, so you can grab that too. But just have fun with it, and I'll put the actual post of all the new basic commands, as far as we know so far, up on Discord here within a couple days. The ROMs are on the Color Computer Archive. MAME you have to go get from MAME itself, of course. I'm not sure what you mean. Yep. It's the exact same chip. It'd be the same. Yeah. Better because there's no PIC controller in the middle, so you can actually directly talk to the chip and actually do some sound effects you wouldn't be able to do on the current one. No. You're limited by the hardware of the chip itself, so. What are you hunting for, Brian? Oh. Not sure. Oh. Did you send me a picture? Maybe I can show it on mine. Yeah. We'll tell you what. We'll put it up in the public Discord for you guys to take a look there once we get it going. So it's just color changes on the text screen. So. Anyway, I highly recommend if you're interested in it, definitely go get the ROM from the Color Computer Archive. Get the latest version of MAME. MAME, of course, runs on multi-platforms, and have fun.